Hey, what's going on YouTube? Welcome back to the channel. Today we're talking about the Clemson Tigers and give a little quick preview for this team as we head into spring ball and what this team's going to look like for the 2025 season. Now, obviously last year Clemson, they probably didn't meet their expectations. Even though they did sneak into the ACC championship, they ended up winning that game and making the college football playoff. But regular season wise, I think it was a pretty disappointing season for them, especially for all the talent that they had on their team. Even with that, you still made the playoff. You lost to a very good Texas team, and you made it a pretty interesting game late in the fourth quarter. And headed into 2025, the expectations should be even higher, and you have probably the highest returning production out of any team that's going to be preseason top 10 or top 5. You have a quarterback coming back. You have your top 3 wide receivers coming back. You have a very good offensive line coming back. And defensively, you have a lot of really good players, especially in the front 7. And Dabo Swinney, he's known for not using the transfer portal. He did use the transfer portal just a little bit. As you can see, the highlighted guys are either freshmen or incoming transfers. And as you can see, only one of them is a projected starter, and that's Will Helt. He is from Purdue. He's a very good defensive end. He had 10 tackles for loss a year ago, and he's only going to bolster what is already a very good front 4. But before we get to that, let's start on the offensive side of the ball. And as we mentioned, Cade Klubnik is coming back, one of the best quarterbacks in college football, and he's throwing to one of the best receiver cores in college football. You have TJ Moore, Bryant Wesco Jr., and Antonio Williams, as you can see on the screen. All 3 of these guys played very well last season, and they played very well for being a very young trio. We saw them against Texas come up with some pretty big plays, but not only the Texas game, but also the ACC title game, they had pretty good games. So you kind of have to figure the passing game is going to do very well this year, and I expect great things, especially from Cade Klubnik. I think he's going to be a top 3, top 5 quarterback in college football, and his offensive line protecting him is going to be very good as well. You have Tristan Lay, who's a very good left tackle. He was also a very high recruit coming out of high school. Same thing with Harris Sewell. So the left side's pretty good. Walker Parks is a very good offensive guard, right next to Blake Miller. And the tight end room, you have very good options at tight end. You have Olsen Pat Henry and then Christian Bentancur. Bentancur could be one of the better tight ends in the ACC if he plays a lot this year. And then at the running back spot, you lose Phil Maffa, and right now Keith Adams Jr. is the projected starter, but Gideon Davidson, this is a very talented true freshman. I had him in my own top 100 rankings for the class of 2025, and this is a kid that's college ready in terms of size already. Now it's just going to be adding that extra muscle, getting ready to take that starting #1 spot on the depth chart, and there's a very good chance he does that. And if he does, I think that says a lot about the talent he is, because this running back room, they do have some guys that have been around for a while. And this offensive unit as a whole has a couple of veterans mixed in with some young guys that got good experience a year ago, and that experience is only going to help them this season. Now, flipping it over to defense, this front 4 is one of the best in college football, and they just got Tom Allen as their defensive coordinator. If you remember, Tom Allen is coming over from Penn State. Now, while he might not have the talent that he had at Penn State, he has a lot of guys that are going to buy in, and this defense is going to be very good. Tom Allen and Dabo Swinney, for that matter, are both player-friendly coaches. They're both player coaches, and they're going to get the best out of their guys. And I think the buy-in is going to be very high with this team. We already mentioned Will Helt. He's coming in to load up on the defensive line, and he's going to be opposite of TJ Parker, who's going to be one of the better defensive ends in college football. And to go with those two, you also have Peter Woods, who's just a brutal force on the interior. He's probably going to be all ACC. He could push for an All-American spot. We're going to have to see if he reaches that full potential. We kind of saw flashes of it last year, but nonetheless, Peter Woods is a very talented defensive lineman. Behind that, you have Sammy Brown and Wade Woodaz. I apologize if I butchered that last name, but both of these linebackers are very good. Sammy Brown, he played as a true freshman last year a little bit, and coming out of high school, same thing as Peter Woods. Same thing as Cade Klubnik. Davidson, he's just another one of those guys that was very highly rated. He was a 5-star linebacker. He chose Clemson over Georgia, and we saw the impact that he could have on the team just as a true freshman. Now, Will Helt, he's a transfer, but they also went out and got one more transfer on defense, and that is Jeremiah Alexander. The name might sound familiar. Alexander's from Alabama. He was also another highly rated kid coming out of high school. He was recruited as a defensive end. He got moved to linebacker when he was with Alabama. And I don't know if this is just for depth or if they think Alexander can push for a starting spot. Personally, I don't think he's going to be a starter like right now in the spring, but he could definitely be a starter in the fall or even by week 1. You know, sometimes the kid has too many traits or is too athletic, too skilled to keep off the field. That could be the case with Alexander. Now in the secondary, you have Kylan Griffin, Ricardo Jones, Avion Terrell, Ashton Hampton, Khalil Barnes. Another really good group. You also have Jaden Lucas on the back end as a backup. And this is a group with a lot of pressure on them. I'd say probably the most pressure out of any position group on this team. And the reason I say that is because Tom Allen, the way he plays defense, or at least how he played defense at Penn State, is he's going to put these guys on islands. The secondary guys have a lot of pressure on them because the front 7 players are focused on the run and pass rush, and these guys are usually one-on-one in man coverage or in some form of cover 1, cover 2. And at Penn State, Tom Allen, he had some very good defensive backs, some guys that were good at man coverage. Now, I don't know if Clemson has the guys that can play man coverage like that, but I do know they have very good athletes in the secondary, and I know he's going to put them in a position to succeed. So overall, I think you have to like what this defense looks like on paper. As we go through spring ball, we're kind of going to see what this team looks like and how good this front 7 could really be. Now with that, let's just take a look at their schedule. They start out with LSU. That is at home. They get the Tigers in Memorial Stadium at Clemson. That's a big time opportunity for Dabo to really put a stamp on the 2025 season to start. And then they get Troy, another home game, a game you're probably supposed to win. And then you get into conference play. I don't have the dates on here when I made this. I don't think the conference schedules are out yet. But in conference, you have Boston College, Duke, Florida State, SMU, Syracuse, Georgia Tech, Louisville, and North Carolina. All right, so some takeaways from this is, first of all, you don't play Miami. I think that's very notable. You avoid Miami, probably the second best team in the ACC behind you. Them and SMU, probably a toss-up, but you do get SMU. Rematch of the ACC championship last year. We don't know how good Boston College is going to be. We don't know how good Duke's going to be. Florida State, if Castellanos isn't the man at quarterback and he's not above average, I don't think Florida State's going to be very good this year. Syracuse, they lost a lot. Obviously, Kyle McCord's gone. Same with Georgia Tech. They lost a lot in the transfer portal. We don't know what they're going to look like. Louisville could be pretty good. You lose Tyler Shuck, obviously, and a lot of veterans on both sides of the ball. They could be a challenge. At North Carolina, obviously, that's a whole new team. Whole new coaching staff with Bill Belichick in there. So looking at the schedule, I think you have to like how it sets up. Obviously, you get South Carolina at the end of the season. That could very well be your second or third hardest game. And if I had to pick right now, I think there's 3 games that stand out as the biggest challenges. Obviously, LSU, South Carolina, and then SMU. Those are probably the 3. Now, let's say you go 1-2 in those 3 games, but you went out and you win the rest of your games. You're sitting at 10-2. That means you have a win against South Carolina, SMU, or LSU, which is pretty good. And that also means your 2 losses were against pretty good teams, 2 probably preseason top 15 teams. So all in all, I think that'd be a success. And right now, I think that's what Clemson fans should expect. I think 10-2, 11-1 are very reasonable. And for Dabo's sake, I'm kind of hoping that's the case because I think he's trying to beat the odds, right? Like, I'm not trying to live and die by the transfer portal. I'm going to go out, recruit guys, show that development is still key. And I think he's doing that right now. I've told a lot of my friends and people I talk to about college football, I think Clemson could be the most underrated team headed into 2025. I just think people are overlooking how much talent they have coming back. I mentioned at the top, they return probably the most production out of any team inside the top 10. I've seen multiple different graphics showing like the percentage of offense coming back, percentage of defense. Clemson's number 1 or 2 in every single category. And I think that speaks volumes to just how good they were last year and just how much better they're going to be this year. They played a lot of guys early on last season, freshmen and sophomore, that are all coming back and are going to be very good players. And looking at the schedule, they're going to have the talent to go up against any of these teams. And I think people are going to be surprised, even though they shouldn't be, when Clemson comes out firing this year. Or if they beat LSU, people still might think like, hey, what is this? Clemson wasn't supposed to be good. When in reality, they're probably going to be better than LSU early on in the season. Now, Clemson fans, with all that, let me know what you guys think. Do you guys think your team has a chance to go 10-2, 11-1, and get back in the playoff? What are your guys' thoughts on Cade Klubnik and that receiving core we talked about? And finally, what do you guys think your record will be this fall? And before you guys head out, be sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you're new. And with that, I'll see you on the next video.